The island connects strongly with A Course in Miracles because both explore manufactured identity, false reality, body identification, fear conditioning, and the awakening from a controlled perceptual system. At the beginning of the film, the inhabitants of the facility believe the outside world is contaminated. They accept rigid rules, repetitive routines, surveillance, and artificial meaning structures because they think survival depends on obedience. That is very close to ACIM's description of the ego thought system. The ego constructs an entire perceptual environment based on fear. The world is dangerous, safety requires control, individuality is fragile, authority lies outside you, questioning is risky. And most importantly, the system must not be questioned too deeply. The clones think they are living meaningful lives, but their reality is carefully curated. Their hopes, fears, routines, and aspirations are manipulated to maintain compliance. ACIM would say the ego operates similarly. It generates a self-concept and then builds a world to reinforce belief in that identity, not because the world is literally a computer simulation, but because perception itself becomes conditioned interpretation. Then Lincoln's sixth echo begins noticing inconsistencies. This matters. Awakening in ACIM often starts not with enlightenment, but with cognitive dissonance. Something feels off about the reality structure you've accepted. Small cracks appear, repeating patterns, unanswered questions, a sense that the official narrative does not fully explain experience. The ego tries to suppress this because certainty maintains control. The lottery in the film is especially symbolic. Everyone believes winning the lottery means salvation, going to the island, the last uncontaminated paradise. But the promised salvation is actually death. That aligns uncannily with ACIM's teaching that the ego offers substitutes for heaven that ultimately reinforce separation and sacrifice. The ego constantly promises, if you achieve this, you'll finally be complete. But its salvations are temporary, conditional, and often destructive underneath. Status, specialness, success, romantic completion, control. The ego markets these as the island. ACIM says the ego's heaven is always built on sacrifice. Then comes the central revelation. The clones are not who they think they are. Their identities were manufactured for utility. This parallels ACIM's idea of the ego self-concept, a constructed identity created for functioning within separation consciousness. The Course repeatedly emphasizes, you are not the image you made of yourself. The clones identify completely with bodies, roles, schedules, and external definitions because they have no memory beyond the constructed narrative. That mirrors the ACIM idea that we mistake the body personality identity for our actual self. Again, this does not mean the body is evil or unreal in a simplistic sense. ACIM is subtler than that. The body becomes problematic when treated as the core of identity rather than a temporary communication device. Dr. Merrick represents another ego dynamic, using life instrumentally. To him, the clones are resources, not beings. That's what happens when consciousness loses contact with shared innocence. Others become functions, producers, consumers, threats, status objects, utilities. ACIM says the ego cannot truly perceive brothers, it perceives separate interests. There's also a powerful theme around memory. The clones carry emotional traces and intuitions beyond what they were programmed to know. Something in them reaches toward truth despite conditioning. That resembles ACIM's idea that beneath all defenses remains the memory of God, not intellectual memory, but a deep pull toward wholeness and reality. The awakening process in the island is frightening because the known world dissolves before stable truth fully emerges. That's psychologically honest. Many spiritual narratives romanticize awakening, but ACIM itself acknowledges that the undoing of identity structures can feel deeply destabilizing. The ego interprets awakening as annihilation because its control system depends on misidentification continuing. Then the outside world is revealed. Ironically, it is neither paradise nor apocalypse, just messy reality. That's important. The ego tends toward extremes, either utopia fantasy or catastrophe fantasy. Truth is usually less theatrical and more immediate. There's also a deep ACIM layer in the relationship between Lincoln and Jordan. At first, they relate through shared conditioning and survival fear, but gradually their connection becomes collaborative awakening, not you complete me. More, we help each other remember. That's closer to holy relationship in ACIM terms. And finally, the ending. The clones emerge into open sky and natural light after living inside enclosed artificial structures. Classic awakening imagery. But ACIM would add an important nuance. Freedom is not merely escaping external control systems. A person can leave the facility psychologically while still carrying the facility internally. Fear, conditioning, specialness, authority addiction, body identification. Real liberation is perceptual. The deeper island ACM points beyond is not a physical destination at all. It is the end of believing that identity can be manufactured, owned, controlled, or separated from its source.